Hi all, welcome back to another Your PT Hub nutrition session with me, Dan Richardson, the head of nutrition for Your PT. I am here today to talk more about performance nutrition, probably an area that I'm most comfortable in because I spend a lot of my time working with professional athletes alongside similar clientele to what you guys also work with too on the gym floor. And the main thing with performance nutrition is ultimately it is very similar to the nutrition and the basics that we've already gone through with a few small tweaks. So that's what we're going to look into today. We're going to have a bit of a conversation around how we change our performance plates for fueling, some of the extra tips and tricks that we might want to offer to our clients to help support them with their endeavors in their performance, and also some other areas in and around that. So let's get into it. So, building performance plates. In the last section of the Your PT Nutrition Hub, we spoke about the Eat Well guide, and we spoke about how that potentially is flawed for performing athletes or clients. I know a lot of you work with the classic weekend warriors, those that take part in marathons, half marathons, tough mudders, or potentially even a high rocks here and there. But it's important that we don't deviate too much from the health-based nutrition that we know and love, and we understand that it's actually really beneficial for our clients. So thinking in and around that performance plate, for those that can recall, it was very equally split. A third fruit and veg, a third carbohydrates, and of course a third protein and a little bit of fats within that food plate. When it comes to performance nutrition, we have to think about how we can manipulate that food plate specifically for pre and post training or competition or match or whatever we're looking towards performing in. So the easiest way to look towards building a pre-training plate is to increase our carbohydrate intake. And arguably, something has to give within that plate. So we'd reduce our fruit and veg intake because that is our least energy dense source within that plate. However, don't worry, I can hear the gasps already that a nutritionist would dare say to cut out fruit and veg intake after saying how important getting 10 different fruit and veggies are in a day. But ultimately, we're going to bring them back in post-training. So pre-training, 50% of our food plate wants to be made up of carbohydrates. Remember, we spoke about a quarter of our food plate made up of carbohydrates would be a fistful of carbs. In this instance, we need 2 fistful of carbs on that food plate to create the right amount. Now, as PTs thinking, hang on a minute, that's a lot of pasta or a lot of rice, we might want to diversify our carbs. A good example would be a burrito, where we've got a mix of rice and a wrap in there to increase the carb content of the meal. We might even get some of those carbs through the kidney beans that we add within the sauce, and it might even be that we have a secondary wrap on the side if needed for the carb intake. What that's going to do is help us elicit more energy in the session and actually prepare us better to go towards that harder session. Now, granted, if we're going to do a yoga class or we're doing a light lifting session in the gym, we don't need to increase our carb intake. We can stick with the Eat Well guide of the equal food plates. But actually, when we think about pre-training for a big event or potentially a high rocks class, we want to look towards having at least 50% of our plate made up of carbohydrates. So that's pre-training covered. We know what we need to do within that section. Let's move on to post-training. We finished our workout and we need to recover. Now, our clients will naturally gravitate towards protein, and maybe even some of the personal trainers watching this video might think the same. But actually, there's something called muscle protein synthesis. I'll throw a graph up on the screen to explain it in a little bit of better detail, but I'll describe us through the graph. Ultimately, we have our muscle protein synthesis rate, and across the day, that rate changes on the amount of protein that we eat across each meal and sitting. So it might be at breakfast, we have between 10 and 40 grams of protein. And then actually within our snacks, we have between 5 and 10 grams of protein. Now we're going to get this nice consistent wave across our food intake if we equally split protein up. The problem is, if we backload our protein to post-training, what's honestly going to happen is we're going to get a big spike in our muscle protein synthesis, but we're aware in the research that there's a threshold to the optimal hit of protein. Anything over 40 grams is ultimately wasted for muscle protein recovery. So actually, having more protein post-training doesn't result in better recovery, it just results in wasted food intake. So we're better looking at our fruit and veg intake. The micronutrients, again, as we mentioned, are the little things that make the big difference when it comes to recovery. So actually having a plate built of 50% fruit and veg and a quarter plate carbohydrates whilst keeping protein and fats the same is going to be the best option for post-training. Now remember, this plate isn't designed for your everyday client. This plate's designed for those that have athletic endeavors or need to look towards performance nutrition. So we're thinking about those that are training very hard for an hour or two, that need to carb up before the session, and then they need to downregulate and support their recovery post-session through the increase of micronutrients. So that's how we tackle post-training food intake. We've tackled pre and we've tackled post-training nutrition and how we can manipulate what we already know without prescribing something really specific and, something that's going to be difficult to understand. We've managed to build something that's quite robust for our clients and some visual-based guidance to support them. The other side that I want to tap into when it comes to performance nutrition is hydration. If we are training at a higher level, arguably when we look at the Eat Well plate, it recommends between 6 and 8 glasses of water within an individual day. That's only about 1.5 to 2 litres of water in an individual day. For somebody who potentially has a higher sweat rate due to a higher volume of training, we're going to have to look to manipulate that hydration intake. Now, I see some ridiculous numbers online given out by nutrition coaches. I see people saying that for every 15 to 20 minutes, we need 250 milliliters of water. We need 3 liters of water for daily hydration. And then after a training session, we need 1.5 liters of water to rehydrate effectively. Let's just put a scenario in place and do the maths very quickly on it. Let's say we have a client who comes and trains in the morning and then goes maybe for a run in the evening. Both sessions consisting of around an hour. So that specific client would need, according to what some people suggest, 3 liters of water for daily hydration. They need around 1 litre of water per session that they're doing, because ultimately 250 mils of water every 15 minutes would arguably mean that they'd need 1 litre per session. And then after each session, they'd need 1.5 litres of water to recover and rehydrate effectively. Now, I'm counting the maths on my hands here, but ultimately 8 litres of water would be the prescribed amount of hydration. This is why we try and pull that prescription-based nutrition away from our clients. The best way of working out how much more water we need and how much hydration we require is arguably through our urine colour. Using a simple urine colour chart can ultimately build a really good way of testing whether we're hydrated or not for our clients. So the paler and the lighter the colour, and I'll put a urine colour chart up on screen for reference, but the paler and the lighter the colour of the urine, the better hydrated we are. The darker and the more yellow our urine is, the less hydrated we are. And then putting some actions based on the research to that. So for example, if we're down in the bottom end of dehydration, we're going to need a large bottle of water immediately, 500 mils to 1 litre over the next kind of 20 to 30 minutes. If we're in a good spot for hydration and we've only had 2 litres of water within that day, keep drinking at the same rate, keep sipping away. So actually what we can do is then prescribe habits to our clients to support hydration, and those that sweat more because they're higher performers will arguably still get the level of support when it comes to hydration that they require. So that's how we'd look towards tackling hydration specifically for performance nutrition clients. We've gone through food plates, we've gone through hydration, and the last part of my agenda when speaking about performance nutrition is snacking. Snacking is the secret weapon you can give your clients to get more out of their sessions if they're a higher performer. So looking towards a high carbohydrate snack 60 to 30 minutes before training will boost our sugar levels and arguably boost our energy levels. For those clients that are concerned that eating a sugary based snack before a session is going to disrupt their overall goals and habits, we need to also speak to the client about the rationale as to why we put that snack in place. So spiking our energy levels 30 minutes before a session means that we can use that short chain energy in the first 10 to 15 minutes of that workout. And then actually we move on to our longer lasting carb stores for the latter parts of the session, meaning that we don't fatigue or tire too quickly, especially if we're thinking of higher performance. Those snacks might be simple things, a cereal bar, a slice of toast, rice cakes, potentially even looking towards sweets or dried fruits to give us a kick of sugars. Now, when we speak about sports drinks, such as Lucozades, Gatorades, Powerades, we only really want to have them if our session is going to last over 60 minutes, because we can pre-fuel with our pre-performance plate and our pre-performance snacking with our foods. If we're going to be performing over 60 minutes, then granted, regardless what we do with our foods beforehand, we are going to start running out of energy at that 60 to 70 minute mark. So let's say our session is an hour and a half long, 90 minutes. That's where we might say to our clients and recommend a sports drink such as a Lucozade to sip on pre-training, pre-event, and then obviously take that into the session with them alongside water too. But that's another weapon that we can use in our arsenal to support our clients pre-training when it comes to snacks. And if we're thinking about post-training snacks, arguably we want to get a full meal in for recovery, but if we want faster, quicker recovery, we'd aim for something that has a minimum of 20 grams of protein alongside a 40 gram hit of carbohydrates. Carbs are just as crucial for recovery and refueling as is protein. We've spoke about not overdoing it with protein, so double scooping a protein shake is never going to be the answer. Something like a high protein yogurt and a cereal bar post-training will be really beneficial, or even chocolate milk with a banana can also be a super effective post-training recovery snack. Bringing these in for your clients arguably will make them better performers in the gym. But just remember, if we're working with our general population, we want to stick towards the basics and healthy nutrition. Whereas if we're working with those that maybe have more athletic goals, that's where we can start introducing some of the performance nutrition themes to the athletes. Thanks again for joining another video, and I'll see you in the next one.